Good evening. Welcome to workshop for the City of Oceanside, the Oceanside City Council for January 31st, 2024. Mr. Navarro, would you please take roll?
Mayor Sanchez.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kime. Here. Councilmember Joyce.
Present.
Councilmember Robinson. Here. Councilmember Weiss. Here.
It must be a magical time today. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Right. So this is a workshop. It is a one item, plus at the end we will have entertain public communications on off-agenda topics. So workshop number one is take the following actions to the, for the Re-Beach Oceanside Coastal Resilience Competition. A, receipt of the conceptual alternatives and concur with the following staff recommended options. I, approval of the staff and jury recommended selection of International Coastal Management as a winning design team. With it, living speed bumps concept. Number two, approval of the staff and jury recommended modifications to the selected design concept. And then under B, authorization for staff to proceed with final design, engineering, and environmental compliance tasks of Phase 2 sand nourishment and retention pilot project. So we're going to begin with a report from Jamie Timberlake, our Coastal Zone Administrator. Ms. Timberlake?
Okay. Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss the Re-Beach Oceanside project with you tonight. My name is Jamie Timberlake. I'm the Coastal Zone Administrator for the City of Oceanside. I'm joined here today by Brian Leslie, Senior Coastal Scientist from GHD and lead of the Re-Beach Oceanside project team, as well as Aaron Sawyer, Principal Engineer and Director at International Coastal Management, which is based on the Gold Coast of Australia. And thank you, Aaron, for coming here tonight to join us again. Our presentation will begin with a brief summary of the Re-Beach Oceanside Coastal Resilience Design Competition, which has been a principal effort of the Coastal Management Program over the last year. And this has been an effort to design an innovative solution for restoring and retaining sand on our beaches. This has been a very public process thus far, and I want to personally thank the local community and passionate beachgoers for continuing to support our efforts by providing input throughout this process. We made a lot of progress in just 1 year, and that was due in part to the community staying extremely involved and being responsive to our requests for input. So Re-Beach is the Coastal Resilience Design Competition launched in 2023 in June to determine the best method to improve and prolong our sand management efforts. Re-Beach and the design competition is one portion of the overall effort to restore the shoreline in Oceanside. This city-led effort began in 2020 with a year-long preliminary engineering evaluation and feasibility study to identify deficiencies in current coastal management actions, as well as determine a suite of solutions to lessen long-term beach erosion. The feasibility study, or Phase 1 as we call it, it concluded that a high-quality source of sand should be identified and a beach nourishment program developed to provide more consistent sediment supply to our coast. And also, this should be combined with a retention mechanism that could assist with retaining sand, since beach profile surveys and just plain observations have shown that placed sand does not persist on Oceanside's beaches south of the pier. At an August 2021 public workshop, the City Council provided staff direction to pursue the recommendations given in Phase 1. Specifically, staff was directed to move forward with the environmental analysis, design, and permitting of a pilot project that would provide both beach nourishment and sand retention options, which we're now calling Phase 2. So in 2023, City Council approved a contract with GHD for the Phase 2 Sand Nourishment and Retention Pilot Project. The main tasks outlined in the Phase 2 pilot project scope include community and stakeholder engagement, baseline monitoring development, engineering analysis and design, which is where Rebeach fits in with the overall project, and environmental compliance and permitting. Oop. About that. So that brings us up to the Rebeach competition. Early in the development of Phase 2, city staff and the project team decided that a conceptual design for sand retention may be best pursued through a design competition, because this would give us an opportunity to see what kinds of innovation are already out there, already being tested in other communities across the world that are dealing with similar coastal stressors. Additionally, public outreach during Phase 1 asked that the city be more creative with sand retention solutions rather than using traditional sand retention mechanisms. So the primary goals of Rebeach are to design and implement a retention feature that will restore and maintain sand along the coast while providing additional benefits to the community, and increase the efficiency and extend the benefits of any and all sand nourishment efforts that the city, the region, or the federal government carry forward. As this is a pilot project, the entirety of this effort will aim to achieve these primary objectives in a designated location along our coast and utilize modeling and monitoring to prove the efficacy of the pilot approach before scaling up this concept to be implemented in additional areas along the shoreline. If our monitoring program shows anticipated widespread benefits, this concept can be reviewed for implementation in other areas of the coast under an amended project effort that would incorporate elements of what we've learned to date. So to achieve these high-level objectives, the competition was planned with key components. A jury was created early in the Rebeach process to help frame the competition and aid in the selection of a winning sand retention concept. To be part of the jury, targeted community members and regional experts, all coming from distinct areas of coastal management, were asked to submit an application. The application requested that prospective jury members discuss their commitment to the competition's objectives and characterize their qualifications for judging sand retention designs. Jurors were selected based on responses, ensuring that a balanced cross-section of coastal specialists was represented. The Rebeach jury was comprised of 10 voting and 5 non-voting members and included representatives from the local surf community, local advocates for sustainable sand management, experts in the creation of artificial reefs, and marine and terrestrial biologists, former and retired staff from the California Coastal Commission, and regional representation from coastal cities to the south, amongst others. Also early in the development of the competition, the project team selected jury created the design criteria that provided a boundary to the scope of the design for the proposed solutions and generated a set of objectives that the design team concepts could be measured against. These criteria included an assessment of physical performance, impacts or improvements to the environment, costs for construction and anticipated maintenance for the structure, the ability of the design to provide multiple benefits to the community, and how the concept fits in with regional coastal resilience. These design criteria were used to create a solicitation package, and 36 targeted coastal engineering and landscape firms were solicited and encouraged to form teams to be most competitive. We had 6 teams bid to be part of Rebeach, and 3 final teams were selected to be included in the competition. So the design team finalists took part in 3 design rounds, and to get to that ultimate design, which we're discussing tonight. Around week 6 of each round, design teams participated in a charrette where the project team and sometimes the jury provided feedback and comments on the progress made on the pilot project concept. Each design round culminated with a presentation to the public at an in-person public workshop, which was recorded, with digital versions of the presentation available for subsequent viewing. The 3 design teams were present at all 3 public workshops, where they were given the opportunity to present their latest concepts, and the public was given the opportunity to provide direct comment or input via questionnaire. And following each workshop, the design teams were asked to clearly show how the stakeholder engagement shaped the design through each of the rounds. All public workshops were heavily noticed via press release on the city's and competition web pages, social media platforms, even a couple pop-up events. And the presentations from each workshop were available virtually via recording. All workshops were very well attended, with approximately 150 to 220 persons participating at each workshop, and the comments from all of these workshops are aggregated in a community input summary, which is part of the staff report, also on the rebeach.org webpage. So given the regional interest and potential effect of the implemented project at various scales, the project team shared updates with regional stakeholders throughout the rebeach process and even prior to the initiation of the Phase 2 contract. Informational presentations were given to city councils or designated commissions in Carlsbad, Encinitas, Solana Beach, and Del Mar. Additional regional outreach included presentations at a myriad of local and regional meetings and events, including several presentations to SANDAG, the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce, the San Diego Regional Climate Collaborative, and conferences like the Headwaters to Ocean Conference and the Beach Ecology Coalition, which just took place yesterday. Regional outreach will continue through the final engineering and environmental compliance tasks that are next on the agenda for the project team. The city is already scheduled to provide an update at the April Beach Preservation Commission meeting at the City of Carlsbad, and will provide an update at the next SANDAG Technical Task Force meeting, which is scheduled to occur here in Oceanside in March. So after the final design round and 3rd public workshop, the jury deliberation commenced, deciding on the winner of the design competition. The jury utilized the distinct parameters outlined in the design criteria to evaluate the designs throughout the competition, leading to a critical analysis at the final jury deliberation. The jury unanimously approved the Living Speed Bumps design concept as the winning design brought forward by International Coastal Management. And so with that, I will welcome Aaron Salyer to the podium to talk about his design.
Is that one? Thanks, Jamie, and thank you, Council, for seeing me today, and thanks to everybody for turning up. It's been really amazing to see the public interest in this project, and it's one that's really, we're really passionate about, and we're excited to be the selected team and move forward into the next stages. So I'll just give you a little rundown quickly on who we are as a company and what we're about and why we're relevant here at Oceanside. We're called International Coastal Management, being based on the Gold Coast since 1989. And actually our founder and executive engineer had a similar role to Jamie back at the Gold Coast City Council in the early 80s, and actually implemented a lot of the similar sort of like pilot projects in the coastal zone, which are still in use today. So while we do these kinds of projects all over the world, the most relevant example of parallel is really our work that we've done on the Gold Coast. And here's just an example. You can see the Gold Coast in Australia, early coastal development back in the 1920s and 30s. It's been like a popular beach surf culture town ever since. And around the sort of the late 70s, early 80s, the conditions on the Gold Coast changed, both by man-made influences, by the interruption of the natural sand flow with the building harbor entrances at various places along the coast, and it kind of disrupted the sand flow, and we were left with this long rock wall that you can see in that top little corner there. And then if you look on the image below, that's the one at Oceanside, and you can see there's almost like a direct parallel, and the Gold Coast being on the upside down version of Oceanside in a similar sort of wave condition, environment condition. We're really looking at a very parallel condition here. So what do we do on the Gold Coast? We did exactly this process. We created a pilot approach and we brought experts in from around the world, and we talked about the best and the brightest minds at the time, and we implemented the best solutions that were then back in the 80s and the 90s. Those pilot projects then turned into bigger projects, which have then gone on to be successful over the last few decades, developing management strategies and monitoring programs and surfing enhancement and dune development. And these are all the kind of the same sort of things that we want to build on that last 40 years of success with that parallel and bring them here into this pilot project. And then, as Jamie said, hopefully take the pilot project, learn from it over the next couple of years, and then extend out for the rest of the city or the Oceanside stretch. So what are we actually talking about? When we're doing these kinds of re-beach programs or any kind of coastal protection projects, you really have to look at a few different things. One is the sediment input, like the sand that's coming into the system, and then we look at the top of the beach and the bottom of the beach. This is where you're getting the whole holistic approach and a really healthy beach profile. So in Oceanside, in this concept, we're looking at the top of the beach at, we're calling them speed bumps. They're basically a small rounded headland, which I'll pull up in the next slide, is actually similar in scale to the one that's already under the existing pier, that sort of rounded headland that you might be able to see more now that it's a little bit eroded around it. We're talking about some dune vegetation along the top of the beach, and at the bottom of the beach, we're talking about nearshore nourishment. Nearshore nourishment is just a different type of nourishment that you guys aren't as familiar with as yet, but it's a practice that has been long successful in Australia. It's basically putting sand from the offshore in sort of to replicate like a natural sandbar, and the ocean actually does the work for you and can help to bring that sand in. So it's a combination of putting sand on the beach and sand in the sandbar near shore itself. So conceptually, what are we looking at? This is a potential location for one of the rounded headlands at the end of the street here, right where the car park is. But as Jamie mentioned, part of the next stage is also going to be looking further into where the potential site could be. But this is the kind of scale that we're looking at. On top of the headland, we're expecting to make it a usable public space, some parkland, some seating, some dune vegetation. And this gives us the overall plan that I mentioned before, where we have a couple of headlands on top of the beach. These are really helping to stabilize that top end of the beach while still allowing the flexibility and the dynamic area in the intertidal zone for the longshore transport to occur. So what we were really trying to achieve in this project objective was to slow down the natural processes and not stop the natural processes. Different to the groin approach, which is very structured and very contained. So when you have a very contained area within the groins, there's not a lot of possibility for the sand to transport along, whereas this is really allowing natural processes to occur, but just is sort of slowing that down. And we came up with the name, the speed bump approach. So that's the speed bump onshore, and the speed bump offshore is actually the artificial reef. So we've had a lot of success with this on the Gold Coast as well in similar conditions, similar wave environment. It's really in reducing those high energy waves that would normally hit the beach, kind of like you're seeing at the moment with that erosion scarp going along the top. That's really going to take out the sting of that high impact wave energy, where it's also going to slow down the literal transport along the beach as well, and really help that newly nourished beach maintain its stability for a longer period of time. Kind of a spin-off of the reef is also an ecological and a social benefit too. So much like the Gold Coast, Oceanside's very much a surf culture, and that's very much like built into the characteristic here at Oceanside, which we can assimilate with too. And so there's this potential too around the reef to actually enhance the surfing capabilities. And obviously there's a huge potential to create underwater new marine habitats, which are really going to boost not only just this localized spot, but actually help in a wider sense. Just to give you an example of how the new space might be used, if you picture this sort of rounded headland, again, in a similar scale to the one that's under the existing pier. You can imagine walking along the strand and walking straight off the strand at the same level, right out to the end of the headland where you might have, some public seating and you'd be able to look out over the new reef, which has got waves breaking around it and fish jumping out of the water. The beach, stable on both sides. At the bottom of the headland, we're looking at implementing, some specially designed eco units that can actually help increase the biodiversity around that intertidal zone as well. This is what I'm talking about here. So you get that nice intertidal habit around the bottom of the headland. Nice dune vegetation up at the top of the beach. Just the sight of the amount of dune vegetation at the top of the beach might freak people out, but it's actually a really good way to retain beach on the top of the sand, and it's proven very successful on the Gold Coast. And we have this pretty much the way along the coast, with spaces along the dunes for access. So there's plenty of access, and the whole point of this exercise is really to have nice stable beach access. So that's what we're aiming for here, and like I said, encouraging biodiversity on the actual reef itself. And that's the kind of design approach in a nutshell. And I guess we'll come back to that later, but in the meantime, I'll hand it over to Brian.
Great. Well, thank you, Aaron, and thanks for having us here tonight. We're really excited about the milestone that we're reaching tonight. We've been working really hard over this last year to roll out this design competition, and we're excited with the outcome, and ICM as being the selected firm in the living speed bumps concept. We did a lot this last year, but we're not taking the foot off the gas. There's still a lot of work to do in the years ahead. I'll be talking about the next 2 years and what's kind of in front of us, with a bit of a focus on the first year, because that's where a lot of the design elements are going to be refined and kind of tuned, and there's going to be a lot of engagement points for the community to weigh in on what these features look like. The goal is to get a shovel-ready project in early 2026. So an optimistic but achievable goal, and a lot of work ahead. The first thing we'll be doing is, that we heard from loud and clear from the community, is like, where does this pilot go? We've showed, the design competitors have shown where, kind of contextualized where these pilots could be located, but we've asked everyone to not get too set in on those locations. This study is what you guys have been waiting for. This is where we locate this pilot in space. The way we're going to do that is to look at each of these 3 segments and objectively look at or describe how this pilot could be located within these 3 segments. The 3 segments are First Street or Seagaze to Wisconsin, Wisconsin to Buccaneer, and Buccaneer Beach to Buena Vista Lagoon. The study would, again, describe how that pilot would work in that location. It would look at how sand can be managed at this location and in and around within our kind of adaptive management framework. We would look at constructability and maintenance considerations at that location. It would look at impacts to biological resources, surf resources, and adjacent beaches, kind of relative to one another. And also identify different risk factors, which could be marine safety or land ownership considerations. The goal is to present this in a public workshop in early summer of this year to gain input on preliminary findings, and then present back to the council in early fall of this year to present out our findings and have you all make a decision on where to site the pilot. We'll also be within this talking about future phasing. So like Aaron was speaking to, where this could be applied down the coast within Oceanside to affect or to benefit more beaches as success is gained, lessons are learned. Another key component of this within this next several months is going to be rolling up the sleeves, GHD team with Aaron to refine the major design elements of the project. We understand that there's been success realized on the Gold Coast with this concept, but we want to cite it in Oceanside and make sure that we feel comfortable with it as designed, functioning with our kind of higher wave energy, not higher wave energy, but longer wave periods, which does correlate to energy. Just make sure that we're comfortable with all the design elements and kind of shaking, kind of a shakedown of the design and make sure we're all comfortable. And as we heard from the jury, some of these landscape features we want to refine, make sure they fit the space and the place that they would be sited in within these pilot locations. So making sure these artificial headlands kind of fit the character of Oceanside and are programmed with the community input gained, and make sure that they're the amenities that the community has asked for. We're also going to be refining cost estimates. To date, we've asked the design teams to all come up with a cost estimate. We've given them labor rates and material costs so that we're all looking at apples to apples across teams. So the cost estimates you've been shared with to date are kind of really preliminary. They could be right on, but they could be off. We are going to be refining this working with ICM and getting into material costs, where those materials would come from, talking to maybe marine contractors, how they would approach constructability of this project to really kind of dial in the cost so that we can look for grant funding and have a stable construction cost estimate to work from. Excuse me. We'll also be doing quite a bit of modeling to understand and help answer questions around the performance of the project, both in terms of how the shoreline's going to perform immediately within our pilot, but also on adjacent beaches. The numerical modeling is going to help us answer those questions. We've also heard from various stakeholders, the jury and ICM, that physical modeling might really benefit this project. Physical modeling is it's a wave tank essentially. Everything's scaled down, waves and the features, structures in the sand, to help answer questions around surf zone currents, rips, that would help marine safety personnel feel comfortable maybe with how those things are going to perform, but also help us understand wave breaking characteristics, which will give us some insight to how surfing is going to work around the structure. We can tune the structure based on the outcome of this model. Concurrent with those efforts, we're going to be developing a beach nourishment program. As Aaron mentioned, anything that we do here is going to need a lot of sand. And he mentioned top of beach, bottom of beach. So there's different quality of sand that is suitable for both. Like the harbor dredge material sand is really great for the nearshore bar placement, whereas the on beach, top of beach sand we need a coarser, higher quality grain size sand for that. So we're doing a couple things to help develop this beach nourishment program. The first is in the next month or two, you'll see a vessel going offshore, and it's investigating those yellow polygons, which are kind of tough to see. But we're looking offshore for a high quality source of sand that's immediately offshore Oceanside beaches. Should we find a source of sand close by to Oceanside shoreline, that would be great because it'd be a really cost-effective way to bring a lot of sand to the beach. There is other compatible high-quality sand sources in the region that are being used, for instance, Solana Beach, for their nourishment program right now, which is SO5, which is off of Del Mar, but that's kind of a haul. So it'd be great if we could find something immediately offshore. The other thing we're doing is, in conjunction, is looking at modifications to the existing harbor dredging program to try to get that material further south. And we're looking at the sand bypass system in greater level detail. We've conceptualized an underground pipeline that would go from Harbor Beach all the way as far south as we can get it, so that the Corps can get sand further south every year where the city needs it most. Right now, there's some impediments that the Corps cites as reasons why the sand doesn't get as far south as we'd like, maybe. We also need to develop an adaptive management approach. The adaptive management approach is going to identify actions and triggers. Triggers being certain thresholds that are met, whether it's an adjacent beach hitting a certain minimum beach width, or it could be anything. This is a conceptual kind of model of what this adaptive management approach could include. This adaptive management approach is going to be really important for permitting, but also going to give comfort to downdrift cities that there's kind of guardrails around this pilot, which has some experimental elements to it. We've conceptualized the first phase being implementing the pilot, of course, which has a beach nourishment component to it. Should we reach a threshold, which is to be defined, T1, we would then augment sediment management techniques more sediment here, less there kind of thing if we're seeing adjacent beach impacts. If impacts can't be mitigated or lessened through sediment management techniques, we then move to modification of the features, which could be making features smaller, making features shallower or deeper, things like that. And should we not be able to lessen impacts through modification of the features, then we'd move to a partial or full removal. That's gonna be really important for permitting, is just being able to show that we've thought through what removal looks like, and all the design teams have analyzed that. To conclude here, this is a project timeline over the next year and a half. What's missing from the right is just more final engineering and environmental permitting. This next year, I'm kind of highlighting again because there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of refinement that's going to happen. And you see those concurrent activities that are going to happen, and basically final engineering starts to really ramp up after we've selected a pilot location and have this nourishment program in place. You'll also see those different moments in time where the community can weigh in, and city council will go to city council as well. There's going to be other moments in time that will be important for the community to weigh in. That concludes our slide deck. We look forward to the discussion and here for questions.
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
That came up when you were showing the smaller headland, and I think it was described as something similar to what's underneath the pier, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it looks higher than I remember. How high is that? And would that be higher than, say, the Strand or Pacific Street, or would that be level?
It looks to be level with the Strand. I can ask Aaron to maybe chime in on some more details, but it's level with the Strand, which is about, I think, plus 15. And that's something we heard from the jury and others, is to really, I don't know if the question's like, we should tweak that. I think the element that we heard is like, we should work closely with a landscape architect to make sure that feature kind of blends with the natural landscape and promote kind of natural systems around it.
So the idea is to walk out onto the beach, and then it looked like there were stairs to go down
There could
into
be.
the sand.
Yeah, that's an element that's, I would say, really loosely defined. It would be, really important to get community and other input of what to use that space for. It's just kind of shown as a representative, kind of the programming shown is just kind of.
It's something that could happen, something else could happen. Is that,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
great.
there'll be some like workshops to really kind of refine what that is for features. Two head.
Thank you.
And depending on where you are, whether it's in reach or segment 3, it could have a different uses or different programming.
Right. Thank you. How many speakers do we have?
We currently have 20 speakers.
20?
20.
Okay, let's go ahead and begin. 2 minutes. So we do have Del Mar City Council Member Dwight Warden.
Dwight Warden. To be followed by Dirk Akima.
I understand you came early, so you can be first.
I did, thank you. I am very pleased to be here. I am Dwight Warden, Del Mar City Council member, and I was honored to be one of the jurors on your team and one of the 2 local city representatives on the jury. The other is Joy Lines from Encinitas. And I want to start out by saying I'm speaking for myself and as a member of your jury, not for my city council. They haven't looked at this yet, so they haven't taken a position. I want to compliment Oceanside on the process. I think we started with a bit of a false start with a draft for a growing field. We've got a lot of pushback from my city and other cities and Surfrider and others. And to your credit, you sort of rebooted and started this international competition to do it better. And I think that has really succeeded and brought you a very good project. We had a very robust jury review. We spent a full day in deliberations and really plowed into this as deeply as we could. And I am here to express my full support for the recommendation that's before you today, to go with ICM and to go with the recommendations that accompany that are in your staff report. I would note a couple of things that I think are important. One, this is the start of the process, not the end. This is the selection of who's going to go through the gauntlet process. Who's going to do the technical design work? Who's going to try to get the permits? Who's going to convince the Coastal Commission and every other stakeholder that this is a good idea? And I think ICM is a good choice to do that. Their design is experimental, hasn't been tried on the West Coast, but it's worked on the Gold Coast, so all the indications are it's got a good chance of succeeding. But you have built into the criteria some protections. Number one, it's just a pilot. So it's going to be done on a pilot basis. Number two, it's going to be monitored and adjusted through adaptive management if problems arise as it comes along. And number three, as a fail-safe, it can be removed if it fails for some reason. And all of those things are good. And number four, it can be scaled up if it succeeds, which I think we all think it will, for not only for Oceanside, but for other places that are having similar problems. It may surprise some of you to realize there are 61 cities in the state of California that have a piece of the coastline. And I'm involved with the League of California Cities group, working with them, and they know about your project. You'd think somebody figured this out elsewhere. Well, they haven't. They're all saying, Oceanside, thank you, bless you. We hope it works for you so that we can do it. The downstream impacts, I think, are covered in the project, but you're going to have to prove those up, part of the environmental review process, and convince your neighbors and Surfrider and stakeholders that there won't be adverse downstream impacts, but the criteria to do that are built into the project, which is good. My final comment is there's a potential area where there could be competition between cities. One is for sand. The good news is at our sediment task force, we were told there's probably 50 million cubic yards out there somewhere. The other is competing for money, where all the cities are going to go after the same pots of money, including Oceanside, their project. And a way to address that, I think, is to marry this project up as the pilot project called for Regional Beach Sand Project number 3, and bring it in and marry it up with SANDAG. All the agencies in the region are working together. That will maximize your chance of success. And thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, Councilmember Warden, for participating in the process and for coming to speak today in support. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dirk Akima, to be followed by Steve Mayshew, to be followed by Charles Bowen.
Good evening, City Council and Oceanside Beach advocates. I want to thank Dwight Warden also for being part of the process. Obviously, is very influential in the whole community, being chair of the Sandag Shoreline Preservation. Thank you so much, Dwight. My name is Dirk Akima. I've lived in Oceanside for 35 years. I've enjoyed our peaceful city, our mild climate, and our beautiful beaches. 5 years ago, myself and a few other graybeard watermen, Bob over here and Nick somewhere over here, we decided to stand up at a city council meeting and ask the city to save Oceanside sand. It's been an interesting journey. Saving sand is not easy, quick, or cheap, but we realize that having a nice beach is vital to our Oceanside way of life. We've attracted attention and support from residents, surfers, politicians, media, and the California Coastal Commission. Other coastal cities have followed the lead that Oceanside has initiated. These cities have started processes to restore and protect their own natural habitat and beaches. Some of these cities include San Clemente, Carpinteria, and Santa Cruz. All of those cities, by the way, have cited Oceanside as an example of what to do. So we really are the leaders in this evolving science, and I'm really proud to be part of Oceanside and part of the process. I'd like to thank city staff. We've got Jamie Timberlake and especially Jonathan Borrego for spearheading this project. Also like to thank GHD, Brian, Leslie, and Nick. Resilient Cities has been critical. Alex and especially Sam for spearheading the whole Beach concept. Been very innovative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pardon me?
It's red.
What'd you say?
Next is Steve Mishu.
I'm not done, Esther.
Sorry.
I'm almost done, though.
Don't worry, you'll have other people will say the same thing you
One
wanted to
last thing. I'd
say.
like to encourage City Council to approve today's vote.
Yeah, thank
It will
you.
be vital
Thank you.
to all City Council members support and endorse the project.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, Steve?
For listening.
I'll make up for his length by being a little shorter.
Yeah.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Steve Mashew, a retired Air Force colonel, an engineer, and an HOA board member at North Coast Village for 25 years. I urge you to vote unanimously to approve our staff's recommendation before you tonight. Jamie and GHD did an excellent job conducting an innovative competition for our city. The owners at North Coast Village have been asking me, when are we going to get more sand at our beach? I tell them because we have a little bit of sand left at our beach. We're at the end of the line and are not included in this re-beach effort. On the other hand, I hear similar requests from other neighborhoods up and down the coast. When are we going to get our sand? And everybody wants to know. So I think this pilot project only restores and retains sand on about 4,000 feet of our 3.7-mile coastline. So to win the support of all of Oceanside, I think it's important that this next phase, the staff develop that long-term plan, which Brian talked about, to replenish, restore, and structurally retain sand along the complete shoreline. For instance, will Cassidy Street's beach be restored in 2028 or 2032? Will my North Strand location be restored in 2035 or 2042? I think to get that done, to get the 100% support we need from the city, we need to have a real good plan that shows everybody when they're going to get their sand on their favorite beach. When this plan is completed, and I get the idea it's going to be completed in this August meeting and then come to a city council meeting in September, it'd be really good to have a vote to set that as the guide star for the whole program. Of course, it can change. Things can change during time, but having that as a plan keeps everybody understanding when they're going to get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charles Bowen, followed by Louise Curcio. Curcio?
Can you hear me? My name is Charles Bowen, and I'm with Save Oceanside Sand. In October of 2023, we spoke at the Coastal Commission, Bob Ashton and myself. And following our talking points with the Coastal Commission, this is what the Coastal Commission discussed.
I guess I would start and then turn it over to Carl for more specifics. But I think on the Oceanside sand issue, there's not currently an application in front of the commission that I'm aware of, but it's an issue that community has been looking into. You know, they've lost a lot of sand on their beaches. How are they going to maintain them? It's an ongoing discussion the community's having. We've been having it with them. I actually spoke to the folks that came in to speak today. So we will be continuing to work with the city and encourage their creativity, frankly. I think that the way they're approaching it, they did a big contest to come up with different ideas. And it's exactly the approach that we want people to take, to bring all the ideas to the table as we're trying to figure out how we adapt to sea level rise. So I just want to say that there's nothing in front of the commission immediately, but we're encouraging all the work that's being done in Oceanside and look forward to looking at a breadth of proposals at some point in the future on how to adapt that community to sea level rise.
Yeah, so just really quickly on that issue, I just hate to read anything that says, oh, we're not even applying because the commission would reject it. I'm sure all of us would agree that that's not the way it goes, so we look forward to that.
I made that exact comment to the two gentlemen that came in to speak, and actually made sure that they could reach out to our staff, and we're interested in having those conversations with the city itself, with the community members, to encourage those discussions. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Louise? followed by Scott Ashton.
Hello.
There's two podiums, so if you want to come on up and speak right afterwards. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Louise Curcio, 2036 South Pacific. I'm a fifth-generation Oceanside resident. My children's great-great-grandmother built our house over 90 years ago. That was back in the day when we had blackout shades from World War II, and the beaches were so big, the bottom of beachgoers' feet burned on the way to the ocean. Who remembers that? One of Oceanside's best resources is the beach, and that's why we're here today. I wholeheartedly support the recommended pilot project proposed. However, I urge you to think beyond the confines of this pilot project and to think big as you go into the next phase. Think beyond the pilot. Assume the pilot will be a success and the sand returns. Think big, plan now, and anticipate how to scale the project to all Oceanside beaches. As you move forward with this pilot, ask what can be done today to make the eventual expansion to all Oceanside beaches faster and easier. Gather the data to support the expansion. Think ahead and do the foundational work that paves the way for a project that includes all Oceanside beaches. Approve the pilot as proposed, anticipate and plan for the project to scale. Think big about bringing back all Oceanside beaches so residents and visitors can enjoy the beach with their friends and family for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curcio. Scott Ashton, followed by Mark Gamble.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Scott Ashton. I'm CEO of the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce. I also had the honor of serving on the design competition jury, and I'm here to express the Chamber's full support of staff and jury recommendations this evening. We truly appreciated the decision of this council to move forward with phase 2 of this process last January, and it's incredibly encouraging to see the work that has been done to move this process forward in the last 12 months. For our small businesses, the beaches are a vital economic driver. Visitor spending in Oceanside has grown exponentially over the past couple of decades and has been a boon to our local economy, bringing in over $500 million annually of spending to our local business community. This spending is critical to the success of many of our small businesses and provides important tax revenue to fund essential services for Oceanside residents. Last week, I emailed you letters of support from many of our neighboring chambers and business organizations that understand the regional significance of maintaining a healthy coastline in Oceanside. We commend city staff for seeking innovative options for addressing this issue and the efforts made to bring us where we are today. And I respectfully request your approval of the solution that is recommended by the jury and city staff this evening. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Gamble, followed by Bruce Elsey.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mark Gamble, and my wife, Allison, is a fourth-generation homeowner here in Oceanside, and I'm thrilled to have recently joined her as a homeowner as we purchased a home for our family in the city. I'm here this evening with members of my family who are also homeowners in Oceanside, and we want to express our support for the city's selection of ICM as the winning designer for the sand replenishment and retention project, and commend everybody in this room who's had a hand in this. It's very impressive from what we've seen. We are in full support of the pilot phase and strongly urge the city to expedite the process to save the remaining 2/3 of Oceanside's precious beaches outside the scope of this pilot. Our city's sandy beaches used to provide recreation for tens of thousands of residents and visitors throughout the year. My kids grew up building sandcastles on the beach, as did my wife. As those beaches have disappeared, there is now a generation of kids who will not have that same experience. And for those of us who used to run on the beach, we now have to do so on the streets and the roadways and the sidewalks with increased risk of being a pedestrian versus automobile victim. And I've been one, not here in this city, in a different city, and it's no fun. In addition, public safety continues to be threatened by people who can get on the beach during low tides, but often have to climb and traverse seawalls and borders in order to get back to their starting points. The lack of sand also creates hazards for swimmers and surfers. Sandy beaches are one of Oceanside's most cherished assets, which is why we thank the city for pursuing the ICM pilot and why we urge you to repair the entirety of Oceanside's coastline as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Elsie? Followed by John Tenaglia. We do have the other podium. Thank you.
You're up.
We could also have a dance.
Hello. I'm Bruce Elsie, and I've only been a resident in Oceanside here since 2017, but even over that short period of time, I've noticed that sand has been an issue. And when I first moved here, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to walk all the way from the outlet of Buena Vista Lagoon all the way to Oceanside to enjoy all the new restaurants and hotels and all that's come on in just the most recent times. And I wanted to just say that I think that it would be wonderful if you guys would go ahead and just accept the recommendation from staff. I think that they've done a great job on getting this all put together. And I wanted to make another comment that it's been my experience with engineering. I do have a manufacturing company that engineers can make recommendations and do what sounds great, but experience is really what, at the end of the day, makes the big difference. So I would encourage you to go with a firm that has had past experience in this type of endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John, followed by Lynn Abate Johnson. Thank you.
Are you going to start the timer? There we go. Thank you.
As soon as you talk,
I get a 2-minute warning.
happens,
Okay.
yeah.
Good evening, staff and council members. My name is John Tenaglia. I live at the very south end of the city at St. Malo Beach. For the record tonight, I'm here speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of any foundation, any charity organization, any volunteer organization, any community, just strictly speaking on my behalf for the record. So I'm going to start with 3 letters, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think everybody has heard that before. I think as far as diversity, you get an A+. Great job, staff, city. ICM, great call. Aaron, I think, is going to do great for this project. The design, the headlands looks great. Inclusion and equity, that's where I think you fall short. Inclusion, i.e., you're only going to pick a pilot that's going to have 1/3 of the city, roughly. Equity, same thing. It's not equitable, in my opinion, if only 1/3 of our shoreline is in this pilot. So let me talk numbers for a second here. The 3 sections, sea gaze to Wisconsin, that's roughly 3,000 feet. That represents 23% of the 2.5-mile Oceanside shoreline. Second section from Wisconsin to Buccaneer is 4,200 linear feet. That's 32% of the entire shoreline. Last section from Buccaneer to Buena Vista Lagoon is about 5,385 linear feet, 1.02 miles, 40%. Not one section is over 40%. Your investment is $2.6 million, which came out of the Biden Recovery Act. I don't think that's a great return on your investment. Again, I love the pilot. I think it's great. I mean, the design. So my pitch is this. The Coastal Commission, everybody here has said they're concerned about the commission. The gentleman that had the video that came up, thank you, that was great. That really, I think, is important that Coastal is now saying, we welcome any innovation you may have. With that being said, I'm just respectfully asking that you don't, I'm not saying stop the project, derail it, just modify the staff report, come back, in 30 or 60 days with the modification to include the entire shoreline. Let's design, entitle, and permit now, and then you can build it in phases along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lynn, followed by Laura Bassett.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Lynn Abate Johnson. I'm a proud South Oceanside resident and an original member of Save Oceanside Sand, one of the original volunteers. I'm here to say something really simple. You have before you much more than a vote tonight. You have before you the opportunity, individually and collectively, to be heroes, and not only for the City of Oceanside, but for our sister cities, our neighboring cities, all up and down the coast. This is an auspicious milestone in history. Think about that. It's an auspicious milestone in the history of Oceanside and, again, for the benefit of our neighboring cities. So I'm here to say, unanimously, please vote yes, like you've never voted yes before. Do it. Thank you. And if anybody wants a Save Oceanside sticker, I'm your person for that.
Thank you. Ms. Bassett, followed by Marnie Velasquez.
Hi, I'm Laura Bassett, Mayor and City Council members. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being bold and taking a step and putting together a contest in the first place. I think it's important that we have private-public partnerships to solve big problems like this. So I just know that as a native Oceanside person who raised 6 kids on those beaches and can't take them down to Cassidy Beach anymore because there's no beach there, I'm super excited and I hope you vote yes, and I think you will. But there's a lot of support here, and I just want to make sure that you know that you guys, I just want to thank you for being bold and taking those steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Velasquez, followed by Sherry Mackin.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marn Velasquez, and I'm currently serving as the president of the board of directors for San Malo Association. San Malo consists of just over 80 homes in South Oceanside on the north side of the Buena Vista Lagoon. We want to congratulate the city for taking this initiative to address the failing coastline with the Re-Beach competition. And we've been following it closely, both as a board and as a community. We recognize there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this effort, and we respect the innovative approach that you guys have taken. We also commend your engagement with the public and the ability to go back and forth with the public and hear the feedback and incorporate that into the evolution of the design. I've been in San Malo since the early 80s, and I spent my childhood playing on the beach, and we raised our kids on those same beaches. Due to the lack of sand in front of our community, it's no longer safe for our residents to use the ocean most of the time. Walking on the cobblestones and the waves crashing on the seawall have created extremely dangerous conditions. The San Malo board is aligned with the recommendation by the staff report to approve and proceed with the ICM design and to move into the phase 2 of planning. However, due to the critical situation along the coastline, especially in South Oceanside, we urge you to include the entire Oceanside coastline during the planning phase, whether it's environmental studies, budgetary planning, and permits. We would really like to be able to be as expedient as possible once the pilot has been tested and proven successful, so that implementation of all of Oceanside won't be delayed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sherry Mackin, followed by Carolyn Kramer.
Thank you so much. Zeb. Hi, Sherry Mackin. Thank you for giving me the time to speak tonight. I've been following this project for years now, and I'm still waiting for what we were promised, a nature-based project, and not a nature-inspired, engineered project. Why weren't nature-based components brought into this project? Wasn't it part of the criteria? The proposed headlands are simply fat groins, 150 feet long, or a little more than a quarter of our pier, and not made of objects that come from nature or naturally from the beach, merely made of more riprap. Where is the sand bypass system plan? I've heard the excuse that Camp Pendleton doesn't want to work with the city. That is our Congress representative is for. He has the ability to take this further. Please ask him. What brings a lot of surfers to this section of Oceanside Beach? Awesome sandbars. The proposed speed bumps will do just what they do for cars, slow down energy, in other words, mess with the surf and current sandbars that bring such good surf to Tyson Street and our beloved pier break. We know the impacts to stopping sand movement to the south, and it's never good to think in a bubble. What will the view corridor look like for those traveling to the Strand? I can't support putting nature-inspired engineered dunes anywhere on our beach, let alone the Strand. Engineered dunes are simply tons and tons of riprap filled with sand that have plants on top. I've been following the Cardiff Dune project, and the engineered dunes have done what they were supposed to do so far. Keep the surf from overtaking Coast Highway, but the unintended consequence is the complete blocking of the gorgeous whitewater views from the ocean to the ocean, from the Chart House south to Seaside Reef. I never want to see that happen on the Strand. Driving the Strand is the only way some people can feel the beach experience, so let's not take that away from them by putting nature-inspired engineers projects on our beach.
Thank you. Carolyn Kramer, followed by Deborah Stern.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Carolyn Kramer, longtime Oceanside resident. I have some big concerns on the project being proposed. From what I am seeing, this Beach project is nothing more than another growing project with a different name. Whether you call our storms the Pineapple Express or Atmospheric River, they are one and the same. In Australia, they call these grinds. In Oceanside, they are being called speed bumps and artificial headlands, and they are one and the same. Hard structures that stop the flow of sand. I am disappointed in the ICM project that the final design took out the sand bypass system without some serious discussion and intervention. There are several causes to the erosion of our beaches: the Oceanside Harbor, the sand detention basins and sand mining up the San Luis Rey River, and most of all, the riprap that lines 85% of our Oceanside coastline. Put this all together and then add sea level rise to the equation, and you have the recipe for our current beach conditions. In Perth, Australia, there is a proposed growing project that is being opposed by 2,000 locals. They are rightly concerned. For all of you that surfed and witnessed the amazing surf we have had at the pier since the Christmas swell and still going off today, you should all be concerned. The surf has been the best I have seen in years, and we can attribute it to our sandbars. I have grave concerns about slowing down the swell and slowing down the sand movement as proposed in the project with speed bumps and artificial reefs. This should have sent up a big red flag to every surfer who surfs our beach breaks. Anything that would slow down the swell, slow down the sand movement is definitely not okay. My suggestion is to quit studying this to death and quit spending money on projects that do not solve the problem. We should all know the solution is getting the natural flow of sand from the Santa Margarita River back onto Oceanside beaches.
Thank you.
Let's quit fighting with the natural flow and put it back where it was intended to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Stern, followed by Kevin McKinney.
Hello, my name is Deborah Stern. My husband, Patrick, and I own 2035 South Pacific Street. 2035 South Pacific Street has been in our family since 1958. 5 different generations have created memories in that home and on the beach that sits in front of it. The beach we share with the state of California not only built memories for the Stern family, but for countless other families who have walked the shores, played in the waves, and swam in the surf. Watching these families has been a joy. I miss them. For the gentleman who talked about what it was like to walk from the lagoon all the way to the pier, we used to enhance our children with taking that walk just to get down there, to walk to the end of the pier and have dinner at Ruby's. I mean, it was amazing, and we should have that back again. And everyone that is lucky enough to be able to get their car just to that beach should be able to get down there and make that walk. I fully support what you're doing. I fully support the pilot program. And I want you to know that I hope that it works and that we're able to get it all the way down to us, down at the very south end. During the past years, Oceanside has been amazing. I mean, I've been coming here as part of this family for close to 40 years now. Being able to leave my house, walking the sand was wonderful, but I can also walk on your street now and go all the way downtown and have the best of times visiting all the shops. I know what you guys did for the City of Oceanside and making it so great we can do for the beaches, and we can get back the sand and have this for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, followed by Mitch Silverstein.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. First of all, my name is Kevin McKenzie, and we're a recent homeowner in South Oceanside and San Malo, but a longtime visitor. And as I'm getting to know the City Council here, I'm super impressed by the leadership that you've shown in supporting this project and moving forward and going through the competition, and hopefully tonight voting for in support of the staff recommendations. It's the sand and the beach is the crown jewel of the city, and I'm really hopeful that you take serious consideration of the comments and the positive comments that have been made tonight, and expand this project, stay focused and enthusiastic, and vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitch Silverstein, followed by
Mr. Silverstein has a group today.
a group presentation.
Yes.
Apologies.
But it's
so-
just me who's going to speak.
Yeah,
Right.
so part of
Do you have
Mr.
we need to
Silverstein's
identify the three other people that you have here today. Could you stand? And
we have Bria Anderson, Amber K. Niuatoa, and Kathleen Steindelberger.
Thank you. You have to stay here while he talks. Okay.
They all wanted to run.
Okay, and how many minutes is it? I forget. 10 minutes, okay.
10 minutes. I won't be that indulgent. I do have a little thing. I'm not going to use it immediately, but I want to make sure it works. All right. 10 minutes, wow. Oh. Honorable Mayor, City Council, city staff, friends of GHD, friends at ICM, everyone. Mitch Silverstein, really glad to be here tonight. Thanks for doing all this. I'm a South O resident. I work for Surfrider Foundation as our San Diego County Policy Manager, and I was also on the design jury as a non-voting advisory member. So I've been to every meeting, haven't missed one, so I'm definitely not coming into this blind. You know, there's a lot of hope and energy in the room tonight, and I definitely don't want to take away from that. But I will cut to the chase, just to be honest. For Surfrider, it's still too early for us to take a hard stance on whether we support or oppose the project in its form. As Brian really explained, this is early on, and there's another year or two of studies that have to happen. And I really would say for everyone, I'm definitely not saying don't vote. You know, I don't need a crystal ball to guess that this is going to move forward tonight. Okay, I just, you know, I don't need that crystal ball. This is going to move forward, and I'm happy that it is. But Surfrider follows the science. We don't support a project just because someone tells us it'll work, or just because it worked somewhere else. So we want to see the science. Remember, this is a lot of taxpayer money. It's not funded yet. We don't want to put in a project that fails and then everybody loses. So that's where Surfrider is coming from tonight. I'm not here to poo-poo it. I'm just saying it's too early for us to take a hard stance on it at this time. I do want to give some shout outs to the city and the Rebeach team about how the things that Surfrider and I really feel you've all done well. We applaud the City of Oceanside for pivoting away from the initial growing field proposal that didn't properly consider downdrift impacts to beaches to the south, including beaches here in Oceanside. And we really applaud the Rebeach team for bringing together a diverse set of stakeholders, including Oceanside locals, but also regional representatives as well. I was honored to be there as well. That's definitely the right way forward.
We also appreciate the regional considerations that have been memorialized in the design criteria, including not negatively affecting downdrift sand supply and striving to positively impact the entire region. Those are really important, and everyone understands it's a needle we have to thread here, but that's the way that we can move this forward. We can't do it if everyone's opposed to the project because they think it's going to ruin their beaches. Lastly, for the shout outs, Surfrider 100% agrees with both the Rebeach team and the Coastal Commission that regardless of how the project evolves from here, it needs to be a pilot project that is adaptable and removable with strict monitoring guidelines for effectiveness, impacts for surfing, and regional impacts as well. So I would ask the City Council to reject any calls to expand the project without even going through the studies. That will guarantee a denied coastal development permit at the Coastal Commission, and we'll get nothing. So now I'll pivot now to some of Surfrider's concerns and maybe some constructive criticism for the Rebeach team. I think since phase 1 of this project, the city's consistently referenced the harbor complex as being responsible for Oceanside's beach erosion problem. That is true, but it's not the only reason. Development across the entirety of Oceanside's historic back beach, from really the Pier Plaza, which is city-owned, the Strand, which is city-owned, to all the houses, those were all built on top of the beach. And we all need to have that reckoning and understand that. And the reason I say that is because if the city's not being forthcoming and communicating the entire spectrum of reasons why Oceanside beaches are disappearing, then how can we really trust the city to put forward an entire comprehensive set of solutions to what's causing Oceanside's beaches to disappear? That's really why I think that I want to see more open-minded communication about all of the causes why our beaches are disappearing, not just the convenient one that we can point to and blame the Army, although I do agree with that one. Also, this idea that sand flow is so complicated that we can't actually predict whether it's going north or south, or maybe that it's going equally in both directions, or that it's independent in each subcell. This has kind of pervaded some of the Rebeach meetings. And, Surfrider respects the complexities of sand movement and that we don't know everything. But research and history has shown that the majority of sand moves south. And we're concerned, basically any studies that show otherwise, they need to be peer reviewed, they need to be cited. Let's not pretend that the things we do in one beach don't affect the next beach over. We also want to be clear that the purpose of the proposed reef is sand retention, not surfing. There's a lot of hope and excitement about improving surfing conditions. The studies that we have on reefs all over the world is that you can't have both. You can't have a sand retention reef and a surfing reef at the same time. It's one or the other. And so we really need to study, and I know that GHG and Jamie and the team wants to do this, so I'm preaching to the choir, but surf monitoring is extremely important because Surfrider will not accept negative consequences to surfing. Lastly, and now I'm going to be a little indulgent. Maybe I will take a couple 10 minutes. Apologies. I want to go over some stuff that I think is really important, that Surfrider thinks is really important. It's this. We can't afford to put all of our eggs in the Rebeach basket. And the Rebeach design criteria, and giving credit to Jamie and Brian, everyone who said, we're having a comprehensive suite of ideas to save Oceanside's beaches. It's not just Rebeach Beach, but here's a quote from the Rebeach project design criteria. The objective is to create more time and space for the city to develop a comprehensive adaptation strategy for coastal resources. So here's some of the things that I think Oceanside can do today and doesn't have to wait 2 years for this Rebeach to come back with the final project. 1, supporting the dune restoration and Loma Alta Creek restoration, which Surfrider supports. 2, we really need to put some time and resources into renovating and reopening our closed public beach access all across Oceanside. I know people in this room agree with me, and I think we can work on that and come up with some solutions starting today, not in 2026 or 27. Another thing, because this has come up lately, is no new short-term rentals in the coastal zone. Too much is too much. I get that tourists, can come here too, but the situation on South Pacific Street is ridiculous. It's a bunch of Airbnbs. I know that some people still live there. I respect the people who live there. I respect tourists too, but it's too much. And then also, we need to have our city staff enforce our local coastal program and current codes. I invite code enforcement to take a walk with Surfrider along the beach in Oceanside during low tide and see that there are dozens of Coastal Act and LCP violations right now that no one's doing anything about. I mean, it shouldn't be up to Surfrider and concerned citizens to appeal locally approved projects that planning staff basically tells the Planning Commission to approve and then appeal it to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission finds that 10 illegal staircases are on top of the riprap revetments, and a bunch of other stuff is going on. That should happen here. We shouldn't have the Coastal Commission doing that. We need buy-in from city council and staff to enforce the laws we have on the books now, because those things hurt our beaches. And then I'm gonna switch here as don't get, just like Carol said, and don't give up on a fixed sand bypass / replenishment system. Remember, if the breakwater, if the Oceanside big breakwater is what stopped our sand, then the most direct mitigation for that is the sand bypass around it. And I agree with Sherry 100%. We can lean on our Congress members to help us with that. We need to get Pendleton to the table. Thirdly, I want to say that, okay, while Scape, one of the design competitors, did not win, the entire jury unanimously supported one of their ideas called Tyson Street Dune Park. So if you see this picture, this is what Tyson Street Beach looks like currently, except that's all cobbled. And this is what Scape proposed. Now, ignore what's down here, because the jury didn't like that. But if you see what's up here, they proposed to reroute the Strand toward the bluff and create 100 feet of beach width right there. This would cost $13 million, I think. This is something that the City of Oceanside, with direction from council, can start looking into today, or maybe next council meeting, and we can start doing. This is highly fundable within the current regime of coastal resilience funding opportunities. And with all due respect to the ICM proposal, you don't need a bunch of studies to figure out if this works or not. This is a slam dunk. You'll gain 100 feet of beach width exactly where the beach disappears in Oceanside. So these are the kind of things we need to think about, and especially when other departments in the city are doing a whole beach plaza revitalization thing that really doesn't take sea level rise into account. I mean, if we redo the Junior Seau Center and the band shell and everything the way that they want to do it, that project may not even survive until a 75-year project life. So this is the kind of stuff we should think about doing on city property where we can immediately. And lastly, I just want to show the difference, what it looks like today, a cobble beach with a road, and what it could look like 100 feet of extra beach. So again, thanks for your time. I did take all 2 minutes. Apologize for being indulgent. Again, I know this is going to move forward, and I really, Surfrider looks forward to monitoring and being part of this conversation the whole time. But there's so much we can do today. Thank you.
You took all 10. Jeff Jones? Is he the last person?
Howdy, Jeff Jones. Thanks for doing all this. Let's see, all my life I've lived Southern California and Hawaii. I've surfed for about 48 years. I've seen beaches come and go and come back. So I actually have a couple questions for I guess it's ICB, the people doing the project, and you don't have to answer them now, but maybe some other time. You mentioned a numerical model, and I'm just wondering where that comes from. I mean, whose model are you using? The other one is, what do you consider quality sand? I know the stuff that we dredge from the harbor, I would call very low quality sand. It pretty much floats in the water and is miserable. And then I really like what Surfrider said. I agree that I'm an engineer by training, and you got to prototype things. You got to see if it works. You got to look at the science, and if the science is showing you it doesn't work, you have to stop. So I'm in full support of that, and I encourage the city council to approve the project, and if it's not working, stop it. Now, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the speakers.
Well, we had 2 that were trying to sign up.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
Okay. First speaker is Bob Ashton, to be followed by, and I do apologize for mispronouncing this, Ethan.
Bob Ashton, you were here earlier. You didn't sign up.
I did. I guess I just didn't hit. I signed up as a group. Can I have 10 minutes as well? I'm just kidding. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'll need 2 minutes. Mitch was going to yield to me, and I'll take some of his time. Well, all right. Good evening, city leaders, staff, fellow beach lovers. I'm Bob Ashton, the president and CEO of Save Oceanside Sand, and also a Beach juror. I represent over 800 beach restoration advocates that have been working with the city for almost 5 years now to make all this happen. It's certainly a marathon, not a sprint. We're probably about mile 8. What do you think, Jamie, about mile 8 maybe? We've reached a historical milestone this evening. We commend the city staff, the council for your sustained commitment to restore our beaches. Save Oceanside Sand provides its strongest endorsement for unanimous city council approval of all the recommendations stated in the Beach Oceanside Winning Design Workshop staff report. Kudos to Jamie, Brian, Jonathan, the Beach team, and the great team at Save Oceanside Sand, who has been staying the course and advocating for this for a long time. Our specific focus in the staff report is the need for solutions for all of Oceanside's coastline. The siting assessment plan of studying 3 sections of our most devastated section of beach, applying grading criteria, and selecting the best one for the pilot provides a time-proven crawl, walk, then run approach. I know our entire community looks forward to the follow-on workshops with full transparency on siting selection and scalability. In conclusion, Oceanside has momentum with the Phase 2 project and is clearly the pathfinder in the region regarding developing innovative solutions to restore our beach and coastal habitat. Only through sustained collaborative and covenant communications with all our sister cities, both inland and coastal, will we succeed. Everybody's watching us. They're going to see what we're going to do, and they're going to replicate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan Kolensinski? Ethan?
Ethan Kolensinski, I really appreciate you giving me 2 minutes to do this. I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, but for the sake of brevity, I'll make it real quick. So where does the sand go? The currents and erosion is California current part of that? And what is the depth of the coast beyond? There might be pretty deep. And are there existing reefs that are out there right off there? I'm a surfer, I know. And what are the artificial reefs going to be made out of? And how is that going to affect swell? And is the Gold Coast similar to California? Is it? And who's going to complain about it? The city of Carlsbad? And then where's the offshore dredging going to happen? And how does Camp Pendleton, shouldn't they be kind of a player in this? And how does it affect tourism? And I live right off Wisconsin. I've been here for a while. I just went to go body surfing the other day, and the waves looked fun. But gosh, if I go out there, how am I going to get in? And there are just a bunch of rocks covered in barnacles, man. I can't get in. I can get out there, but nope, those are slicers. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, let's make it brief.
Okay. So I think that's the last of the speakers, right? Okay, so questions that need to be answered. I caught the 2 from Jeff Jones, numerical model. He had the question about that, and what do you consider quality sand? I didn't catch all the questions from Ethan. Those were fast. So hopefully you caught them all. Okay. Ms. Timberlake.
Trying. Okay, so which question would you like me to start with? Or which answer? Pick one.
Well, okay, so let's start with Jeff. He said he wanted to know about the numerical model, what you were talking about there, and also what do you consider quality sand?
Okay. So I'll let Brian with GHD answer the numerical modeling question. As far as quality sand is sand that has a higher grain size. So just think about it as it weighs a little bit more than fine grain sand. So we want to find a higher grain size because it weighs more and it'll stick around on our beaches for longer. And that's why we're looking offshore of our coastline in areas mostly south of Loma Alta Creek. Those areas haven't been surveyed yet. And so we're looking to find out about new areas of our coastline that we don't know how the sand is there and trying to see if that sand will work on our beaches. I'll pass it to Brian.
Thank you. And then who did you ask to come up to explain the numerical model?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
I can speak to that. Hi. Yeah, so in this next phase, we're going to be doing, we mentioned numerical modeling and physical modeling potentially. Numerical modeling, we're going to, in phase one, we had a lit pack model. There's a lot of models off the shelf, like different proprietary products, some open source ones as well. So as coastal practitioners, we have options and we try to find the right model to answer the right questions. We acknowledge that all models are wrong and some are useful, and that it's not going to give us complete accuracy on the answer, but it's going to be within certain bounds. So we need to be, the adaptive management approach falls into this, where we have a sense for how adjacent beaches are going to respond under certain swell conditions, and we're going to be ready to adapt if it doesn't completely pan out exactly like we modeled. So some of the models we're looking at, I think it's going to be Mike 21 in this next phase, which is a one-line model. So you're looking at how the shore plan form evolves over time. And again, we're feeding it with the bathymetry offshore, bathymetry of the beach, and throwing a bunch of waves at it essentially with the structures kind of built into it to see how the beach reacts.
Okay. Ms. Timberlake, did you catch Ethan's questions?
So there was a question about offshore dredging, and so that's where we're currently developing a sampling and analysis plan, which is being approved by the Army Corps of Engineers, and that will dictate where we get to survey and find out what our sand looks like offshore. And then once that's approved and once we have a good look at the material and we do all of the appropriate testing, chemical and sand grain size analysis, then we'll have a borrow site that we can indicate off our shore. This is ideally, providing we have that good source of sediment. As far as reef material, I will give that one to Aaron from ICM.
And he is worried about getting sliced, okay?
Yeah, we're all getting sliced. Reef material is going to be part of the next detailed design stage, so there's a few different types of materials that will be considered, and we'll do like an options analysis. The couple of reefs that are built on the Gold Coast, one's made out of rock, quarry rock, one's made out of a sand-filled geotextile container. Both have their positives and negatives when it comes to cost, longevity, constructability. So as part of the next detailed design stage, we'll be analyzing a few different types of materials that'll be suitable for this site, to answer your question.
Ethan, could you stand up and repeat the other questions? Because honestly, I did not write as fast. I did write that down.
Absolutely.
The reef is going to be made of.
Let me make it real quick. Bear with me.
Just the questions.
Yeah.
No other comments.
So first of all, I'd like to talk about Camp Pendleton, and are they going to be involved? But also, there are existing offshore reefs right now, right off the coast. I mean, they're not far out. You can go out there, surf it, you know. But then I would like to talk about, okay, beyond that and the depth. And of course, the California current takes everything. And like a gentleman said earlier, well, yeah, it seems as though the sand typically goes south. But where is it going? Where? And I wanted to bring up Newport. I grew up in Newport Beach. And so I want to say thank you for asking. So they have since 23, it's almost 100 years.
Just the question, sir, because I
Yes,
know you
ma'am.
had your
Okay.
2 minutes done.
Yeah.
But I want to make
Okay.
sure your questions are answered.
Yes, ma'am. Ask.
Okay, he
I
asked
think the question was understanding the conditions of the site and where the sand is moving and
Yes.
what we're going to do. Yeah, okay. So, Brian, I mean, you can take that. That's been part of the study that's
Where do you
been
think it
happening
goes?
already.
There are offshore trenches.
And you can have a seat now, sir.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
got your questions.
Hey,
Thank
hey.
you so much.
Yeah, Nick. Yeah, Nick's the next one.
Okay. Someone else was writing faster than all the other of us, okay?
Hi, I'm Nick Sajapor, Senior Coastal Scientist with GHD. So as referenced, there's a concept called a littoral cell. You can think about it like a watershed, but for sand. We've talked about this a lot at the Shoreline Preservation Working Group, as well as the new Sediment Management Task Force of trying to understand better the sources of sand, the transport mechanisms of sand, and then the sinks of sand.
Please turn that off.
There has been a lot of historical thought that sand in the Oceanside littoral cell, which is generally conceived as from Dana Point down to the Scripps Submarine Canyon in La Jolla, as this compartment, that it generally has a net southward transport. A lot of those studies rely on early modeling and conceptual layouts that have tweaked their models to result in the same southward transport that's been conceived. So if you look at some of the 1980s Army Corps reports, they actually found northward transport of sand around Oceanside. Then they've tweaked their model, still get northward net transport, tweaked their model again, and then finally got southward transport. And so we've relied on these studies in the 70s and 80s as a proxy value for our sediment transport mechanisms. What Mitch referenced in terms of this recent understanding of more nuanced subcells is from Scripps, Dr. Bill O'Reilly, as well as some new research out of UC Irvine, Brett Sanders and some of his researchers, of finding more compartments within that larger littoral cell framework where you have inputs, some connectivity boundaries along these compartments where sometimes they're more connected and sometimes they're more disconnected. So you can think in Oceanside during the summer, we got a lot more south swell. So in the summer, you can anticipate sediment moving northward. In the wintertime, we get more west swell, but Oceanside's kind of blocked from swells higher than 270 degrees. So you're getting pretty much straight west swell, and then you get some refraction from the long period swell that may result in southward and/or muted sediment transport. And then to answer the gentleman's question, you also have cross-shore transport, so you have sediment moving offshore that do form the sandbars that we like to surf. And this is all kind of a dance, so it really depends when you look at it. And frankly, we don't have a lot of good data on the observations of sediment transport, of measuring specific grains of sand moving across this entire stretch of coastline to make specific calculations. So we use these proxy data, we use these conceptual kind of layouts and process-driven designs to come up with our valuations. And we'd be looking at refining our understanding using research from Scripps, research from UCI, as well as, in the detailed design of our feature to make sure that we can monitor and articulate through numerical modeling and potentially physical modeling that result in beach change. Sorry if that was long-winded.
Okay, thank you. And then I think he had a question about Camp Pendleton. And was it about the bypass? I think it was about the bypass. Was there, because that wasn't really addressed.
And there was a question about reefs offshore that are existing. So
that's right.
With regard to Camp Pendleton, I have been in discussions with Camp Pendleton. They regularly attend the SANDAG Technical Task Force meetings, which are now happening monthly. And we have had discussions, so I'm basically meeting with their environmental science team. And Camp Pendleton is worried about sea level rise. And they are concerned that taking sand from their shores would result in some impediments for them to be able to execute, national defense. And it's a hard thing to argue against. So they have been actually attending some of our Rebeach workshops to see what we're doing so that they can maybe borrow some of our ideas for things that they can do on Camp Pendleton base. And they're considering, creative uses of their own sediment which is on their shoreline. So it's not completely off the table, I would say, to discuss a sand bypass system built over there, but it is a pretty difficult thing to get through. But we can still go ahead and keep building on that relationship and expand on that, and I see no reason why we can't keep trying. With regard to reefs, we don't have any reefs offshore of Oceanside, and that's just based on NOAA charts and bathymetric surveys that there's many of them. We are topographically challenged, so we're basically a straight coastline with a lot of sand offshore and no features to really really retain any sand, and that's kind of where the whole concept of Rebeach came from, is to retain some sand with some structure, some kind of structure.
All right, thank you very much. And I think that answers all the questions. So to council.
Sorry,
Yes.
there was a couple of questions that I can just quickly
Sure.
touch on.
Okay.
There was a question about having sand dunes at the top of the beach, interrupting the views. I just wanted to touch on, like, having sand dunes is a nature-based solution, as there was a question that why are there no nature-based solutions in the design. Having sand dunes at the top of the beach is a nature-based solution. Actually, the use of nearshore nourishment is considered a nature-based solution as well, but having dunes at the top of the beach, the photo that was shown was with the dune fencing, which is actually meant to be temporary dune fencing while the vegetation takes hold. So it wouldn't be long-term having the fencing there. And then having the dunes at the top of the beach, you're actually raising that top level of the beach in conjunction with sea level rise. So you could either look at the top of a green sand dune or be inundated long-term by sea level rise. There was another question about groins versus headlands, and an example from the project in Western Australia, which Western Australia, to put in perspective, is the difference from California to New York, where the Gold Coast would be California and Western Australia is New York. So it's way, way on the other side of the country. And actually, we're quite familiar with that project, and we agree that having a groin field is not the best solution for Western Australia, and we're actually going to be talking to them about implementing something similar to the Oceanside rounded headlands. The difference between a groin and a headland would be the equivalent of a headland being a house and a groin being a skyscraper. Yes, they're both, a structure, but they perform very differently. The groin goes right out into the a deep water, where the headland is actually short enough to allow the intertidal zone to work as it naturally would. So it's acting completely different, even though, yes, they're both made of a quarry rock. That's just to hit on that point too. I think that covered it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that explanation. So I also want to thank staff for listening to my concerns the last time we had the project before us. You all know I had concerns. I had concerns because having served on the Coastal Commission and having regional partnerships, I really felt that we needed to include our north coastal cities and their concerns, and didn't feel that that was happening the first phase. First phase, as you know, the result was a field of groins. This is the first time that we're even talking about groins. The word wasn't even brought up during the presentations, which I want to thank you for that. It was a field of groins, 14 to 18 groins, the length of our shoreline, 2 football fields out, 600 feet out. That would have caused some severe conditions and would have really starved the coastal cities to the south of us. So I want to thank staff. I want to thank the team and I really want to thank you for the last comments that you made about the difference. The analogy that I was given with respect to the smaller, and the emphasis was the smaller headlands, was that they would be similar to what's underneath the pier. And that's something that, that I would like to see as a pilot project. I waited until the whole thing, the whole process. I attended the meetings. The last one I actually saw by video. And I then also asked mayors of our North Coastal cities to Oceanside twice to be able to speak to staff, to get the presentations, but also speak to staff, ask all the questions. The last time we also had Councilmember Dwight Warden from Del Mar, who was a participant, as well as Joy Lenz, Councilwoman from City of Encinitas. And what I feel that we were able to do with that was to better the relations with our North Coastal cities, but because I do feel very strongly that if they support this, it's going to happen, right? If they were going to be opposing the project, it would never see the light of day. And this is too much investment for something not to happen. So I do appreciate very much staff. I really appreciate the participation by you all. And, I did ask Dwight afterwards about, his role in like reminding the other members on the panel that, hey, you need us too. We need you, you need us. And so it's the whole idea about working together. And even at the last meeting that we had, there was a suggestion that maybe it'll happen, that this be part of, this discussion and having our regional sand replenishment project, Project 3, where we've learned a lot about sand and the size being important, the stickiness being important for the long run. And so working together to make this happen. So I just want to thank you. I understand that some of the inland cities are supporting this, but I think the real crux of this whole thing was to see how is this going to be received by the Coastal Commission, how is this going to be received by our North Coastal cities, and I believe that we have their support to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and move staff's recommendation. Thank you. Mr. Keim?
I just want to take a moment to thank everyone here today. I can see so many faces in there that have been working together with the city, our nonprofits, for the last 4 years. It's amazing where we started and where we're at now. We've gotten lucky to have Ms. Timberlake with us, great partnership with RCC and GHG. It's just, the whole process has been incredible. For me, this started in 2020 when I went to Washington, D.C. And mind you, in the year 2000, Congress ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to do a feasibility study to determine their responsibility for our conditions of our sand and any possible solutions. Congress ordered that now 24 years ago. When I went to D.C. in 2020, I met with a bureaucrat in the Army Corps, and I got lectured on the 3 branches of government and how funding works. And I realized that 2020, our beaches were in horrible condition. I mean, a light bulb clicked that said, if we don't do something, if Oceanside leaders don't do something for their own city, it's not going to happen. And that was born out of this, and everyone's come together. And I've heard politics lately has become very polarizing across the country with every issue. This in the city is one of them that hasn't. For the most part, and I have heard resounding support for this, and actually expectations, and that's it. And this is tough for me. We should have had a project, something done 24 years ago, and when I watch Solana Beach and Encinitas get sand pushed on their beach in San Clemente, and I have to tell my own constituents, I don't know when it's going to happen. That's unacceptable, and so that's why it's so important for us to take this step today. And I'm going to address something that Surfrider said. I know it's not all the boat basin. We have the rivers that are dammed. We have infrastructure that's built on top of beaches, and we don't get the cliff erosion. That happened before us. I can't take out the harbor. I can't remove $1 billion of public and private infrastructure. We have to be creative when we come up with solutions. We've had two regional regional beach sand replenishment programs through SANDAG, 2001 and 2012. We have nothing left. And it's because what Jamie Timberlake said, we have a flat coastline. And so we cannot keep that sand. If we're gonna make any meaningful impact on our sand retention and replenishment, we have to be creative. I mean, we're fighting against development that's happened since the 40s that's hampered us. And we have to, we're in this situation now. We can't go back and change that. And that's what we're doing here. I think it's great to where we've come with this idea, and the process is fantastic. So at the end of the day, I know this is the first step. And my goal at the end of this project is to have the entire coastline. Again, I couldn't agree more with our speakers that say not just a pilot project. I agree. If I had my choice, I'd build the entire project right now. But we need to get something done and keep that momentum, show that it's going to work, and then rapidly get through it. So I'll tell you, I'm very optimistic that I hear the mayor supporting it now, and I hope it continues that way publicly and privately, and we can actually get this thing done. I think it'd be fantastic for the city. Our residents deserve a beach. They deserve leaders that stand up and fight for it and make sure it gets done. So I'll second the motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Robinson?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple real quick things. One, again, I want to thank everybody, and I don't think enough credit can be given to Jamie Timberlake for her efforts and really bringing this concept to us. So I know you don't like hearing that, but just bask in it for a minute. That said, a couple things caught my attention, and early on, when you were talking about the project, it said the jury voted unanimous, and it's very rare that I get to hear diverse groups coming together on a project, whether they're politicians or whatever, and we get unanimous. And so I think that's the first thing that perked me up and said, okay, we're on the right path. The next thing I heard, and I wish I would have wrote the gentleman's name down that said it, but his admonition to stay focused. And I made a note of that, to stay focused. And I think I get that we got the emails. We got quite a few emails. Thank you for sending all those, by the way. But most of them were focused on what we were doing. And those individuals, I get it, looking at our entire beach. And I think that's the goal, to restore our entire beach line. But we have to stay focused and work on this project, I think, as outlined and as the pilot. And then just a real quick comment, when Mitch Silverstein came up, I agree. I think if there are collateral projects that we can do, we should take those on. We should be able to do multiple things if we have the funding and things together. So I do support that. I was a little concerned, though, when he said, Mitch, when you said, Surfrider won't support anything that impacts the surfing. And in my previous line of work, sometimes when we had multiple patients, we had to do something called triage. And, sometimes you couldn't do anything for either patient and they would die. And sometimes you had to really focus your attention on the one patient that needed your efforts the most, and the other one suffered a little bit but made it through. And I don't know where we're gonna be on this as we triage. When I listen to people, they want the beach, they want the wider beach, they wanna build sandcastles, they wanna walk with their kids, they wanna do these things. And then, yes, we have our surfers that love the great surf and all that. I don't know that we can serve both of those patients equally, and hopefully, if the surf's a little different, maybe you guys can consider supporting it if you get 90%. So that's all I'd say is let's see what comes out of this. And I'm glad it's motioned and seconded, and you can probably figure out how I'm going to vote for it. So.
Councilmember Joyce?
Because I do actually have a lot of questions, I'll just say thank you to all. I support all the thank yous. Those are great thank yous. How much sand are we talking for this project to to get to where this has been proposed? We were talking about filling
pilot?
out. Yeah, the pilot.
So right now in the current design, it's 300,000 cubic yards of sand placed on the back beach and 600,000 cubic yards of sand placed in the near shore. So that's 900,000 cubic yards of sand, which is a lot.
Which you said that the one in the water could be lesser quality.
Yeah, so in the near shore, we can place, I don't really like to use the term lesser quality,
Finer grain.
but generally we can place sand that has different grain sizes. It can be it can even be cobble. It can be fine grained. It can be a different color. And so that's kind of the advantage of placing in the near shores. We can place a different type of material than we would want to have on our shoreline. And the other advantage is that we can do that without having a whole bunch of construction vehicles on the beach. So when you do near shore placement, you're basically doing a dredge and placement right out of the dredge, and you don't have to have a pipeline, you don't have to have excavators, and so that really helps us place more sand at one time as well.
Is it anticipated that the 600,000 would move onto shore every year? Is that kind of the design, and that would need to be replaced every year?
So with the nearshore placement, I mean, it's to be determined on how the conditions are that year. But generally, the reason why Aaron said this is a nature-based solution is we're placing sand on the sandbars, and we're expecting that waves will push it back up onto the beach, just like a normal natural function would happen along the coast if we didn't have all of these interesting impediments.
Is there a reason that we don't see nearshore nourishment more locally? It sounded like it happens in other countries, but not as much here.
There are examples of nearshore nourishment. There's a placement site that is offshore of Newport that the Army Corps regularly uses to place the material from Newport Harbor. There's also been nearshore nourishment projects in Imperial Beach. But the biggest hurdle that we have with placing nearshore sediment is to limit the amount of turbidity that would be caused by the placement of sediment right directly into the water. So that's something we're going to have to work through with the regulatory agencies.
Okay. Just a comment on the headlands. I love the idea of creating more public spaces. I'd be against using any of that for commercialization. I think if we're creating more spaces, that's even better. Location, on the location ideas, does it need, or was the original idea of the placement because it connects to where we currently still have beach, where we have sand, and that maybe that would create like a sand ecosystem? Is that any part of that original placement idea?
So all of the design teams were just told to look at areas south of the pier.
Okay.
And so they chose themselves where to ground their design with the understanding from the very beginning that the actual location would be determined in the next iteration or the next phase, in phase 2, but in the next task, which is the final engineering and design. And so that's the next task that we're going forward with after tonight. And so those renderings of the concepts in different places were all just because we needed to, the design teams needed to ground their design somewhere.
Okay. I think as we're looking at a pilot, when we're trying to be respectful of our cities to the south, I think not putting it right on the border with Carlsbad is preferred, even though I know we have a lot of folks from St. Malo that are here tonight to talk, but that's just something that I wanted to voice. And then if we're looking at the difference between, and because one of the recommendations was to modify what was coming forward, if we're looking at the difference between the rocks and the bags, is there a much higher cost to removing rocks if we have to remove that artificial reef?
For that one, I'm going to ask Brian to help me with that one.
I thought that the bags weren't able to be used in California. Is that not true?
Yeah, there is going to be some headwinds with using bags coming off the Pratt's Reef example. Aaron has been educating us on the use of bags in Australia, and that the technology has come a long way since Pratt's Reef was constructed, which was, I believe, 2011 it was constructed. The idea behind bags is that they're really easily removable. You can cut one side and grab the other, and the sand comes out, and you pull your bag out. When they try to deconstruct Pratt's, it was really a mess. The bag just ripped apart in a million pieces. So a lot of people remember that. It's a small community of coastal practitioners in California. So I think we've pretty much decided on rock being the way forward. Rock can be removed. It costs money, of course. It's not as easy as cutting a bag, and if it, that all works correctly, but still very removable. It just costs money. And it can be manipulated too. If we can lower it, say everything doesn't work, we can lower it and it becomes a reef, say, but rock is removable.
Okay. All right, so then the big one that I have a question, and then I kind of want to ask my colleagues a little bit about it. Can you speak to the reason why the sand bypass system wasn't technically in this plan? I've asked this separately, but I didn't hear it answered. I just want everybody to be able to hear it too. Is there a reason why this doesn't include the sand bypass system?
So the sand nourishment program is a constant that we being the city, are providing for the design team. So we had a number that we identified, which was something we needed to do to make sure that all the design teams could kind of design around that number, and that number was 300,000 cubic yards of sand. The method of delivery to those different concepts, that was something that GHD and the city were going to work out on behalf of the design teams. And so it's just that we haven't addressed this yet. This is just part of the next phase of the project. But have we completely removed the idea of doing a sand retention a sand bypass system? It's not currently in the phase 2 sand nourishment phase 2 sand nourishment pilot project. It's not currently a very big part of it, but we do still have some line items to try and rebuild that relationship and get going on whether or not that could actually get done.
And if we had, go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to highlight that we are still talking about a bypass program, but it's a little bit different in that we're talking about bringing a pipeline underground from Harbor Beach to southern beaches to effectively and efficiently get sand from the harbor down.
Yeah.
But we're not looking at Pendleton anymore for a lot of the reasons that Jimmy mentioned around self-preservation of resources on base.
And so those could come from dredges and then move down to the southern beaches. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Sorry.
From dredges, dredgings. And
so when they do the harbor dredging, they can just hook up to the pipeline. If they bring sand from offshore, they can hook up to the pipeline. It's just like a quick means to get sand where we want it, because every year they can't get around certain obstructions on the coastline.
Okay, so I think this is one way that we can actually look at impacting the total of our beaches in a way that's more real and in line with the project that we have also. So I would ask that we include direction for staff to pursue a bypass system from the harbor in tonight's recommendations. They're kind of looking at it, but this would make it a priority of the project. It's not a guarantee to be part of this project. And I'm not saying that it would be necessarily that this team even would be it, because I think there are some other pathways for looking at this. But it seems critical that no matter what we need, whenever what we're doing, it's going to need a ton of sand, and we're going to continue to need the sand. It's going to have to keep coming back. It's $500,000 a year to maintain what we're talking about building.
It does have to be a certain quality of sand, and I guess the harbor sand is not really that good.
Well, if they dredge off, from my understanding, they could still use the bypass system, even if it's not the harbor dredge itself, or is that not true? An offshore dredge or a near shore?
We can include that in the motion. I think they were going to do it anyway to give that direction, but, I think there's a lot of studying to do with respect to that, isn't it? Isn't that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're looking at those components. That offshore investigation that Jamie was mentioning is.
Right.
It would be piggybacking on like Manson's operation annually to have them come off and out of the harbor to dredge a adjacent sand resource and bring it on the coastline. I don't know if you followed the sand engine in the Netherlands, but that's what they did to build the sand engine. Brought 25 million cubic yards on the beach by just stringing a pipeline from offshore on beach. So that's the quickest, most cheapest sand you can get, but is it good enough is a question we're gonna answer.
So the reason I bring it up is because, let's say, this is science, science fails sometimes. If the headlands and the offshore reef and all that fails, I would still like to be able to move sand easily up the beach to all of the parts of our
So
city.
certainly studying that as an option. Let's go ahead and include that in the motion. Second, okay with that?
As long as the project's not contingent on it.
Right, no.
No, I would like
it's
to
a
move it separately, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so it's part of the motion.
Awesome. Okay. So we can do anything, but not everything all at once. This being a pilot is really one of the high probability reasons that we can actually get it through the regulatory commissions. I do want to thank all the grassroots voices who kept this effort present and relevant. I want to thank the mayor for voicing early on that a groin field would be throwing away money and something that would never be built, because that actually was a really important part of this, and it took everybody's efforts across the whole spectrum of what we were talking about to get to where we are today. It took all five. And this is a great example of taking risk to mitigate a seemingly intractable problem. But I also want us to be clear-eyed in this endeavor, because science advancements are not guaranteed. We don't know that it's going to work. That's why we're putting a lot of money in studying it, but nothing's going to tell us until we enact this solution. And we got to be willing to be wrong, which is why a lot of cities have trouble moving forward when they're not 100% sure that they're going to be right. So I am very proud that we are taking this step forward in this risk. Understanding that there are also risks that we don't know about sea level rise, and we just need to be very clear-eyed about that. We don't know what we don't know. So I will be supporting this project, and I do promise in next week's visit to DC that in all of our meetings that are with relevant agencies and representatives, that we'll be pushing for funding and support for this project.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Weiss. Yeah, you.
When you meet with Brad Schwitzenberg, ask him about the study. And let him tell you about the judicial branch and executive branch. So I have a question. So in the future phasing, your study goal is to objectively describe how the pilot could be sited within the following, and there's 3 segments. So will you be studying and modeling each of those 3 segments?
No, we don't plan to model it. We assume the performance, the physical performance will be about equal in each site, and after the siting study, we plan to model it.
So what alternatives are you going to be looking at?
It would be the same pilot project.
You can't just look at one.
Oh, in CEQA, thanks. Jim, you want to speak to that? Yeah, there'll be
This is the preferred alternative. And
the preferred alternative, and then we'd have some alternatives considered but rejected, and we can go down a big list because we've looked at a lot, right?
What would it take to model all 3 segments?
Well, in phase 1, we modeled what would it take to model each segment, the pilot in each location? Is that what you're saying?
Just to model all 3 segments, whether it's a pilot in each location, at least that it. So here's my concern. Part of your schedule is that you're going into final engineering before you've done your environmental and entitlement phase, which seems a little bit backwards to me, because at some point you need to go through the entitlement process and get your CEQA and NEPA document before you go into final design.
Right, we plan to get to a 30 or 60% engineering design.
Okay.
And then, which is pretty typical for launching CEQA. Right now, we're conceptual, preliminary stuff to date, so we got to refine.
So
the
your design will be
footprint.
specific to a location?
Correct, for the numerical model. It's a current approach, we're open to suggestions if that's.
Well, because my concern is if you modeled all three segments, we'd at least have a project. I mean, even though it's a pilot project, you're going to pick one location, but let's just assume 3-4 years from now it is successful. To have to go through the environmental process for another 2 years, to me, is a waste of time and money. If you could model all three segments at one time and just commit, we're only going to build one.
Yeah.
But at least in the project, in the CEQA and NEPA document, you've at least identified and looked at Oceanside's coast, not just necessarily one piece of it. And that's my concern.
It's a good point. And we can easily incorporate that into the model, and it plays into the future phasing.
Correct. And I think you just identified as a future phase, so we're not pre-committing anything, but at least you go through the environmental entitlement process to have something approved. Obviously, if it's not working, then you don't even implement it, but at least then you have it, so we're not starting the wheel all over again and spending all that time. So I'm going to support the motion, but I would just ask that you include, as as one of the alternatives in the CEQA document, model all three segments as a future project.
Would that in any way slow down the process?
No.
Do we have funding for all that?
I did want to mention that the CEQA approach, CEQA NEPA approach, is to do a programmatic document that incorporates the future phases so that, I mean, there's going to be a lot of detail about the pilot within the environmental document and lesser about the future phases so we can tear off that document later.
Now, is there any opportunity to link or coordinate with the federal study staff? Is that federal study dead in the water, or is that got life support and we're just trying to make it jump out of bed?
So the federal Army Corps mitigation study is still ongoing. There's been a little bump in the road, and we're trying to get the Army Corps back on track with providing their deliverables that they've signed up to give us. And so, but at this level, at this stage, we're unsure as to what's going to be that tentatively selected plan or that program that they're offering us for mitigating the effects on our shoreline. And so we just continue to work with them and encourage them to get it done, and so that we can see how that would work with our project.
Could they use some of our studies to basically cut down on their timeline as well?
The Army Corps currently uses our surveys, our beach surveys that are conducted by our citizen science group and with scripts, and that's public data that we provide to the Army Corps. So they are currently using some of our survey data already, and we have an open relationship with them, so we definitely talk with them and share data all the time as much as possible.
Right, and they're actually are supposed to come up with a permanent solution to the erosion, right? So they could choose this, or we would encourage them to choose this as a permanent solution.
The mitigation study, the way that it's authorized through Congress is that it is to mitigate the effects of the construction of the harbor. And so that's a really defined geographic space that, and it's a very nuanced way of saying that it's probably likely to just be sand that they provide for us, and in a specific area that they deem that has been affected by the harbor.
So they can, in essence, decide to pay for all the sun replenishment that we would need for this project for like 50 years.
There has been discussion about whether there would be a one-time placement of sand in a high quantity amount, or whether there would be some kind of interval where they continue to come back and give us sand, like they do for other projects in Encinitas and Solana Beach.
Solana Beach, Encinitas, yeah. San Clemente. All right, ready to vote? Let's vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Time to go to the bar.
Thank you. So the next item is item number 2, public communication on city council matters off agenda. Do we have any requests to speak?
We have no speakers.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned. The next regular scheduled meeting is Valentine's Day, February 14th, 3:30 for a closed session. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.